maybe this is the one industry that may be least disrupted by AI. I feel because people in Washington are somewhat immune from the whole displacement threat, because so much of the work here, of course, is, for lack of a better term, hand-to-hand combat. It's who you know, who you can influence, how you can get somebody to pay attention to you.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Frontline Advantage. We're so excited today to have a good friend of mine, Puru Trivedi. Puru and I met many years ago, actually, when I was in India, through a mutual friend of ours, and we've kept in touch through the years, meeting up across the globe in India, in London, in Washington, and continuing dialogue with one another. I was recently at the Semaphore Global Economy event in Washington, the Semaphore World Economy event, I should say, and I had a chance to catch up with Puru 2 nights in that time frame. I wanted to bring him on to talk about a couple things today, those things being related to AI, what's happening in Washington, and a little bit about his book, My Fourth Culture. Puru is the Senior Vice President at Meridian International, and he's going to tell you more about his background in Meridian. Welcome, Puru.
Hey, Vivek, great to see you. Thank you for having me.
Same. Why don't you tell a little bit of the audience about your background to bring them up to speed?
Sure. Well, I've had an interesting upbringing, and the work I do currently is also could be perceived as very interesting as well. So I was born in Boston. Early years were in India. Middle school was in Northern Virginia. High school was in Saudi Arabia. Studied finance and was in finance for many years. Cut my teeth at places like Salomon Brothers Smith Barney in New York, with Bank of America in Boston, Putnam Investments, State Street doing private equity. And then after the 2008 financial crisis, I decided to pivot, and like many others in our industry, and decided to focus more on things that were more aligned with my passion and with my unique upbringing, which was focused on international issues and things related to government and policy. And so I studied at a place called Babson College. I got my business degree, my MBA from there, and then did the totally not B-school thing afterwards and moved to Washington, D.C. with an MBA. Where I joined the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Fantastic job living in D.C., working for the world's largest business federation, the world's biggest lobbying organization, the U.S. Chamber. And then a few months into living here in Washington, back in 2012, I was offered a job to be the Deputy Country Director for the U.S. India Business Council in New Delhi, where I happily accepted that position. That's around the time that Vic, you and I met. And then after a few successful years at the US IBC, I was married, and for a variety of personal reasons, which I detail in my book, I was looking for a position back here in Washington to take care of my mother. And so I applied to the Meridian International Center, and have been here since 2015 in successive roles, but I've loved the journey along the way.
Love it. And when I'm hearing in there too are capitals, spending time in Washington, spending time in Delhi. This is the first time we're recording an episode where we're not currently living in San Francisco. In fact, this will be, for those watching on YouTube, you can see maybe a little view of London in the background. So we're now here in the capital of the United Kingdom. And so, Puru, at our dinner, when you and I were just catching up, we were talking a lot about someone who's lived in San Francisco now for 5+ years, during this time where we've seen things come out of the big labs, everything from ChatGPT in 2022 late, now Anthropic, what's going on at Google. One of the things we talked about is in a world where all of this is moving very, very quickly, the new mythos model we heard about, is the value of how this AI gets penetrated more broadly in the economy, in our society. Is that something where you believe Washington's influence is going to grow, especially with regulators maybe not being, or politicians not maybe being fully aware of what all of these technologies are doing, the ramifications for people in society? And then we as humans, how do we feel about perhaps losing control to some of this technology? So what does all that look like? What are you hearing on the ground and learning in your conversations with Meridian?
Yeah, it's such an interesting question, Vivek. And typically, if somebody else had asked me this question, I would come to you for your advice. So I appreciate you picking my brain on this. I feel it's kind of a duality these days. It's like, on one hand, maybe this is the one town or one business one industry that may be least disrupted by AI. And on the other hand, the way in which AI is going to shape this industry and shape the way in which people interact, the way in which people think about these issues, about emerging tech in general, but also just the sort of human element, the displacement question that is happening right now in this town. I feel because people in Washington are somewhat immune from the whole displacement threat, because so much of the work here, of course, is, for lack of a better term, hand-to-hand combat. It's who you know, who you can influence, how you can get somebody to pay attention to you. And the getting somebody to pay attention to you isn't necessarily something that's new or unique or novel to Washington. I think there's just overall, Vivek, I'm sure you'd agree, there is a competition for eyeballs. There's a competition for attention like there's never been before. And with the sort of rise of AI, that's only going to accelerate. And so I guess what I'm trying to say here is Washington is focused on AI, but as much as it relates to how much it helps them in their next election cycle to push that special interest forward, to make sure that people in their communities are not affected by it. But the broader economy, it's so hard to predict. And, you did raise one thing, which is there are very smart, knowledgeable people about emerging technology, about AI. I mean, just this week, I'm having intense conversations with Capitol Hill staff about deterministic AI, things that I didn't even know about on Monday. And now on Friday, I'm a little bit smarter because of these conversations. And so there are smart, dedicated public servants here that are not totally cynical and want to make good and want to serve the public interest. But in a time when things are there's so many things that are happening at once, the AI conversation is certainly table stakes, but it's getting crowded out by other more immediate issues like the economy, about geopolitics, about the midterm elections, about just kitchen table issues that still prevail, and they've been prevailing since the 24 election, and here we are in mid-26 still talking about the same things.
Okay, what is your perspective personally? I think of AI a bit as electricity, that it's going to be embedded in everything and we've got to accept that it's going to be around. And then secondly, your work at Meridian. I've been fortunate enough to have the opportunity to be involved in the organization in a very limited capacity, but so grateful for that. For those of you who are not aware of Puru or don't currently follow him or connect with him on LinkedIn, This is someone who's met Kamala Harris. He's met Usha Vance. I mean, every few months I see him meeting someone famous in Washington. And so Meridian is this a place where and you can describe it much better than I can, but it really brings everyone together, cultural diplomacy in a way. And I know you work with various enterprises in different ways on maybe the public policy, the PR type side. And I don't want to butcher exactly, the mission of it all, but I'd love to hear your perspective on AI personally to kind of close that loop a bit. And then really how Meridian fits into the conversation and stream of things you've been talking about.
Yeah, no, thank you. And Vivek, it is us who are honored that you are part of our network and have spoken at our events and forums in the past. So thank you for this. It's very kind of you. Meridian is a public diplomacy institution that was founded 65 years ago, has about 120 employees. It's a lovely 4-acre campus right here in the heart of Washington, D.C., just 10 blocks north of the White House. And we were primarily incepted by the U.S. Department of State back in the early Cold War era to bring rising leaders from all over the world to the United States on these short 2 to 3 week exchange programs. And these leaders, these future leaders, are selected by our U.S. embassies abroad. And the basis of their nomination is dependent on the diplomatic priority of the U.S. embassy in that country. So, what the U.S. embassy in Azerbaijan cares about is different than the one that the Dominican Republic will care about. And so these leaders come in the sort of theory of the case as to why the U.S. taxpayer funds this is these are people that we identify as being future ministers, vice presidents, presidents of their countries. And if we bring them to the United States at this sort of mid-career stage, we show them what truly makes America great. We can send them back to their countries with a better, more holistic view of this country beyond what they just see on the news. And so that theory has played out a number of times. We've had about 200 heads of state that have come on these programs, folks like Margaret Thatcher, Indira Gandhi, the current Secretary General of the UN, Antonio Guterres is one of ours, the former SG of NATO. The list goes on. Since they're sitting in the UK, we've got about 8 prime ministers, British prime ministers who've been alumni. Including Theresa May, Gordon Brown, John Major, Liz Truss, if anybody remembers that one. And Keir Starmer is not a alumni of Meridian, but I know he's in the news these days. But jokes aside, so we developed the next generation of leadership in all these countries, and we hope that they will remember and see America favorably when they get into those leadership positions. Beyond that, we serve as kind of the central networking hub for the foreign diplomatic corps in Washington. So all the foreign embassies, foreign ambassadors, and we engage those foreign diplomats in a variety of different ways. But basically building that trust between the U.S. government, the private sector, and the foreign diplomatic corps in D.C. And then I personally, I lead all of our non-U.S. government work. So that's our work with the foreign diplomats, with the private sector. And so, yeah, and when you're asking about how does AI interplay with our work. So in our private sector network, we have about 120 member companies that support Meridian, and we work very closely with some of the notable names for your audience here, maybe Emerson, Energizer, Ecolab, the Cargill, the list goes on, Boeing, Lockheed, you name it, Chevron, Exxon, Delta, United, Visa, MasterCard. So we work with a number of companies, and obviously they all care about AI and the application of AI, what it means for the broader economy, and what it means for their companies and their employees. And, we also work with the premier tech companies as well, and the premier VCs like I work with the heads of Google, Meta, Netflix, Amazon, General Catalyst Institute, and they're talking about this all the time. And, it's funny at this year, without disclosing who, my dear friend who's in a very senior capacity at AWS was telling me, his title may be more focused on international, but he told me the first 5 months of 2026 have been spent on understanding where and how they can spread the good word about how AWS is being a good player in the communities in which it operates. And that means engaging with state houses, mayors, governors around the US on issues related to water usage, electricity, utilities, land use, zoning, how to change this evolving perception of what data centers means in these local communities. And so we have been working with companies on many different facets of AI. What AI means at Meridian, I'll just quickly close with this, is we are in the business of educating lawmakers and their staffs on emerging technology. And we run a program called Tech Labs. And Tech Labs is a sort of a premier program in Washington for congressional staff to come and learn about emerging technology in a non-biased, non-corporatized way. This is a sort of a more of an academic way of looking at it rather than presentations by companies. And what do these key Senate and House staff need to know about the technology that they're going to be drafting legislation on? And we do the similar program. We do one for Congress and Senate, and then do another stream directly for the executive branch and the administration. And so I encourage your viewers, if you're interested in learning more about Meridian, just go to meridian.org. It's Meridian with an A, MERIDIAN.org. And then there's a number of ways you can plug in. But yeah, it's not as Vivek, as you well know in your work here, it is not a one size fits all approach on AI.
Yeah, and there's a lot that you talked about in that, with the different organizations, their involvement, this program for lawmakers to understand more about technology. I want to touch on something related to your book, and I really think it's important you share your audience, our audience. So you've written a book, and within that book, first of all, it's called My Fourth Culture. And within that book, you talk about having been to 73 plus countries. You've talked about already on here, England, US, India. We can add in Saudi Arabia. We can add in China, fluent in Hindi, conversant in Spanish. Obviously, you and I know one another's personal life and family life. There's a concept called TCK, third culture kid, that you talk about, and you propose this fourth culture. And so I would love for you to talk about that, and then talk about whatever you can share. As of this moment, Trump and a number of business executives are in China, or just were in China. Jensen Huang, Elon Musk, Tim Cook. There was a number of things discussed by both countries, media outlet wise. Can you tie in, share a little bit about the book, the background, the meaning behind writing it, and then what you think all of that might mean? You talk about some of the cultures, how India might relate to certain cultures because of certain dynamics it has. What does this all look like for the U.S. and maybe what Ray Dalio talks about in his book with the rise and fall of different powers? Anything that, and of course, this would be your perspective. We're not saying you're representing anyone in your take, but we would love to hear your perspective as an author on these types of topics.
Yeah, no, Vivek, thank you so much. That really does touch me. That you would even ask me this question because it is so deeply personal to me, and only a close friend like you would know how much it is, how meaningful it is, having met my mother in person back in 2014. So the book was for lack of a better term, it was my pandemic project. It was when I was sitting at home in 2020 and I was getting back into having hobbies. And my wife and I were getting back into playing badminton. And in the evenings, we'd, like everybody else, watch some Netflix and have a glass of wine, etc. And I thought, I need to do something. And the memory of my mother was still very strong in my mind in 2020 because she had just passed in late 2018. And so I just wanted to, as I'm sure you and your viewers will certainly agree, as you age, you start to lose a step, and memory is sometimes the first to go. Um, and so I didn't want to lose any of those precious memories that I had made with my mother and my family. And I wanted to kind of just, frankly, brain dump all those memories, thoughts, anecdotes onto the page. Boy, am I glad I did this before AI, because honestly, it was a real exercise for me to actually sit down and think about narrative and think about, through lines. And, me, I do okay. I've probably never written more than 10, 15,000 words in one time. But what I realized for writing a book, in case any of you are interested in writing one yourselves, it's actually not that hard. If I can do it, trust me, you can too. Um, it was 6 chapters, 5,000 words each, 30,000 words, comes out to a nice, about less than 100-page book, and self-published on Amazon. And in that book, I talk about her life. I talk about my grandparents' life coming during the partition from Lahore to Delhi, about my dad's side of the family, which is equally very illustrious in Indian politics, still is, and then also just kind of overlaying that with my own sort of trails and travails of living in Saudi Arabia, about sort of thinking about being a uh, Indian American Hindu living in Saudi Arabia during the 90s, after having been brought up in Boston, Calcutta, New Delhi, and other places. And so it's just a reflection of what that means and how that shapes. And I know, Vivek, this will certainly hit for you. I didn't realize that when I was writing this book, but the reason I'm the thing that I'm most glad about, the thing that I'm so happy, if I leave nothing else behind in this world, I have this kind of almost memoir to leave to my kid. And I didn't write it at the time in 2020, thinking that about children or whatever, what this could be or what it would look like. I just wrote it kind of selfishly to just free up the RAM in my brain. But I now I'm just so glad that at some point these memories will be there for my kid. And I think about, and now getting to the second part of your question, which is, this is a tricky question because you gave me two in one. Listen, I think the world in the future is going to be a lot more closer. I think what you said at the very beginning of this interview, authenticity is key. I think my only superpower, I'm not a exceptionally smart person, but what I am is genuine. And I think that comes across and it helps build relationships. I think that for our children's generation, because I know you have similar age kids, I think that cross-cultural fluency is going to be a huge leg up. The fact that they can move between San Francisco to Pittsburgh to London and not miss a beat is going to be a huge, huge leg up for them in the future, when everything is, I guess, through lack of a better term, things are commoditized, things are packaged, everything kind of looks the same. But going forward, I think that the global American is going to just be a trend that we see going forward. I think there's going to be more people like us that maybe are first, second generation immigrants, uh, Americans, in our case, Indian Americans, but other tons of friends who are Ethiopian Americans and Syrian Americans and Argentine Americans, and they're going to move to Dubai and Singapore and Cape Town, and they're going to be able to make it in ways in which that we can't even think about right now. So um, I'm not one to show my book, and the reason is I wrote it out of pure joy and pleasure. It is available on Amazon. All the proceeds go to the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute and to the St. Jude's Hospital. I don't really make any money off it. Wasn't trying to. But if you're interested, pick up a copy. It's like $11. And yeah, and if you have any questions, you feel free to reach out to me. I'm sure the team at Team Force will put my email address. But what a pleasure this has been, Vivek, and I am so appreciative of you thinking of me for this capsule.
We're honored, and it's a nice different perspective. We don't really get a lot of perspectives from people in Washington and thinking about what's happening there and how that may affect what we see day to day on the frontline workforce, people in the industrial environment. I mean, even as we think about what our kids might be doing one day, and you talked about commoditization, I think it's so important to have a combined skill set of being able to do things with your mind, of course, even with AI doing more, but also being able to do things physically that may be challenging in some ways for AI to do. And so that's what a lot of the frontline does today. I mean, who knows what the world is going to look like? We focus a lot on this intersection of risk, where you have humans and then you may have machines, humanoids, whatever it may be. And until if we ever have an entirely lights out world of factories and hospitals and all that, when you have humans interacting with AI that are not 100% hard coded, but somewhat have a little bit of their own mind, we believe that you have actually these scenarios of increased risk and uncertainty. And so being able to provide visibility for the humans to be able to speak up about what they're seeing in these different environments or things that they know in their head that they're not exposing, we think is pretty important. And so, just to reiterate what we talked about at dinner and in our conversations, I think the role you have and the influence and the network, I don't see that going away anytime soon, even if AI is taking over much of the economy. In fact, the influence will probably grow, and it may become very central to how do we reshape society policy-wise to ensure, that people have these perspectives of humanity and international cultures and what's around them. I mean, that's the benefit we really want to see of AI, is to actually improve the world, not make it worse for people by removing their sources of income and their humanity and what it means to be here on this planet. So I honestly think you will be busy, and I look forward to. I've always enjoyed following what you do online. I'm so excited to see you in person again in a few months, and I really thank you for coming on Frontline Advantage by Team Force AI.
I am so appreciative of you, Vivek, of what you have built in your various enterprises and businesses. Thank you for thinking of me. I can't wait to see you soon. And to the audience, thanks for your time.